I cannot express how proud I am. Please welcome our youth council. Or is yours?
Careful, the cord's not long.
Yeah.
It's a large cord.
I
do a lot of kids on that.
Hello, everyone. My name is Naveda Tagyani. I go by Vivi if that's easier for you. And all of us are the League of Women Voters of Oregon Youth Council. Whether we got here from school, university, or somewhere else, we're a group of individuals who are excited about voter engagement. And I'll just introduce you guys. If once, please raise your hand if once your name is called. So we have Celine Yaffe, Chris Walker, Mimi Blumillert, and Milas Slum. So we have a great program for you guys today, and we will be passing out 4x6 index cards with pens that we will be saving for the end of the session for a facilitated Q&A. Please write your question, the name of the person who you wish to answer it, and if you want your question answered individually by email, just write your email address on the card, and we will do our best to answer all questions in the time that we have, but if we don't, all answers to questions will be sent out in an email afterwards. So I hand the mic over now to Celine Yaffe.
Okay, cool. Hi. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for right here.
Yeah.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So my name is Celine Yaffe, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Youth Council, and then a little bit about myself, and then some more about Youth Council. So we are a nonpartisan network of high school and college students and civic leaders who have a focus on increasing civic engagement in college and high school campuses in Oregon. We work with a variety of national youth voting organizations to find out how we can collaborate and best address the issues affecting our youth today. We work on building relationships with local and state community organizations and see what we can do within all levels of government. And most importantly, we support student-led participatory democracy with youth voter education materials, organizational action planning, and coordinating get out the vote efforts. So our origin story starts with the great state of Maine, when their League's Youth Council gave a powerful workshop at the League Convention in Denver. This inspired our youth outreach chairs, Diana and Mimi, to start figuring out how to establish a youth council in Oregon after seeing the impact it had on youth through establishing the League in Maine. Now, a little bit about me. I am a senior in Portland, Oregon, and have worked in the social justice and education space for a few years through Planned Parenthood's Teen Council program. Mimi and Diana spotted me giving a presentation for Planned Parenthood, and we connected afterwards about the League's mission and how youth can fit into it. I instantly was intrigued, and after working with them on the council, was appointed president. Chris Walker, a University of Oregon student, was already on board as a youth liaison, and we worked together to create our current youth council structure. I was brought on in February, becoming our second member, and now we have over 10. I get so excited watching us grow and love all the work I've been able to do. This summer, I got the opportunity to fly out to Las Vegas with Diana and Jackie to attend the League's national convention. I was able to connect with so many amazing individuals who supported the Youth Council mission and cemented me in our goals. This summer, I also got to volunteer with the League at the Portland Night Market to register people in my community to vote. I am so thankful for the League and all the amazing things I've been able to participate in since joining. Our goals for the next year are to continue fostering a youth to League member pipeline in local and state leagues nationwide, to support young League members attending the June 2024 League of Women Voter Convention in Washington, D.C., and to connect the League of Women Voters to existing youth civic engagement around the country. We are growing and working on opportunities for our youth council every day. We have 11 total members in both high school and colleges who have various degrees of involvement. We held a workshop in May at our state convention to discuss youth perspectives. All Oregon League members were invited to watch, and on the slide, you can see some of the things we were able to present. Afterwards, we held a Q&A with 6 of our members to give insight into what youth are passionate about. Our next event will be January 19th, 2024, from 10 to 4 at the State Library of Oregon down in Salem. Anyone interested, feel free to connect with any of us after, and we can get your information down. Thank you so much for letting me talk at you. With you today, and I'm going to hand it over to our youth liaison and vice president, Chris Moore.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about why youth voting is pretty low compared to the rest of the population, and what we think we can do about it as a youth council and as a league as a whole. So in the 2022 primary, we see the following data. 92% of Oregonians were registered to vote. That's a really high number. And that's due to the system that we have, automatic voter registration, etc. But only 37.8% of all registered voters return ballots. And 26% of these are in the 18 to 34 year age group. 15.9% of registered voters in the 18 to 34 year age group return ballots. And only 7.4% of non-affiliated voters in the 18 to 34 year age group return their ballots. And the majority of Oregon voters are non-affiliated voters. So we all can see that youth voting lags behind the rest of America. And when not everyone is heard in the political process, progress stagnates, and the full possibilities of our political life aren't realized. But we don't think this is due to apathy by young people. Young people are twice as likely to participate in demonstrations. We think maybe it's more disenchantment. Young people are more likely to feel dismay in the political system and that things aren't working. But they're about the same as the rest of the population in thinking that their vote isn't going to matter. So they don't think that at a higher rate. They do believe in voting just as the rest of the population does. So we think the evidence shows that it's actually due to barriers to voting. And young people are a lot more likely to report that they experience barriers to voting or that their family does. So one barrier is lack of faith in the political system, but barriers to voting is the most common reason, not a lack of faith. So in a 2022 survey, 3 out of 4 young people say they have the power to change the country. Just 2 in 5 say they feel well qualified. So confidence is a barrier to voting. They feel they're not educated enough. But we think one of the roles of the league is affirming voters in this regard and saying, you are smart enough and your voice matters. So here are some barriers that college students face. Out-of-state students and in-state students experience different ways of voting, and it's a very complicated system. For example, they may receive a ballot at their home address in California, say, or Washington, and then their parents don't send it to them at the University of Oregon, for example. And even in-state tuition or in-state students get their ballot at their home address, and they don't realize that they can change their recipient address to being in Eugene, even if they're going to vote down in Grants Pass, for example. There's also a lack of connection to community in college students. You're not with your family who might vote, you're not at school, but you are experiencing a different type of community that's definitely very politically engaged on college campuses. But caring about issues doesn't necessarily mean voting on issues. Voting doesn't necessarily mean caring about issues. Many don't know how to register or update their registration. Oregon is one of the better states at this, but the system is very complicated. And nationwide, this is a huge reason that youth participation is lower. And another reason is the education gap. College Students with bachelor degrees vote on about 50%, but students who just graduated high school vote on about a rate of about 20%. So that's a huge gap. And by race and gender, there's also gaps. 29% of white youth voted in the 2022 midterms, but only 15% of Black youth and 14% of Latino youth. So that's another goal of us to reach further out to these communities. And this is largely due to just a lack of resources in these communities and a lack of civic engagement. There's a gap as well in civic engagement in schools that have heavier minority populations. Young women vote at higher rates than young men, and we can kind of see this in the disenchantment that young men might feel. Yeah, so I think that's something we want to work on, that changing these notions of engagement and what matters in life, and voting also matters for young men. And the youngest youth vote less, 18-year-olds to 22-year-olds. So 25-year-olds, 29-year-olds vote more. But here's the great news. Oregon had some of the highest voter turnout in 2022 at 35.5% of youth. And that's some of the highest in the nation. And that's due to, yeah, and I think we can all give ourselves a round of applause for that and our role in that. And that's due to our system, automatic voter registration when you get your license. But Oregon is lacking in some regards. For example, a lot of states have a state statute that encourages voter registration in schools or civic engagement in schools, and Oregon has no law like this on a state level. And another problem is that 46% of young voters in 2022 were not contacted by a party, by any organizations encouraging them to vote. So that's something we really want to work on. And I think we're going to do that in the upcoming elections. Things like dorm storming, going dorm to dorm room, being in high schools. So we think the League of Women Voters of Oregon and our youth council can play a big role in reducing these barriers. And we're going to do this by supporting youth and the youth council in training peers to register and pre-register young voters in schools. And Celine's already done some of this and she really enjoyed it. And we're also going to work with school administrators. And that's a challenge because reaching out to schools, they have certain email addresses that can't really be reached. So the connections that we have within schools are going to make a big difference. And that's also, I think, where we come in. And as I haven't mentioned, but I really want to, voting is a habit. And it's a lot easier to vote for your 50th time than your first time when you're 18 and you don't know how. You just registered, or maybe you're not registered yet. So it's a habit that we learn and practice and get better at over time. And we're gonna do this with mock elections and teaching youth how to vote. Likewise, we want to have League of Women Voters representatives share how to register to vote. And we'll all participate in this at markets, in schools, and have something simple like a barcode that you can scan. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but we can do it. I believe in us. So I think maybe we can all discuss in our groups what we think the barriers to youth voting are. Yeah, so if you guys want to talk amongst yourself, why you think youth don't vote, and then we can share out a little bit. all had productive discussions, thought about this a little bit, and it's a huge problem. There's a lot of barriers for young people voting. And now I'm gonna pass it along to the next slide. And now Mimi's gonna speak to you about mock elections.
We forgot when I.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, so that's me, I'm Mimi. I have a lot of notes and I think I wanna stand over here so I can talk. Who wants this? Who's yours? All right, now can you hear me?
Yeah, that's
Cool. They told me I could only have 2 slides and so I made really little notes, but then I filled them up. So and I also was the person who finished up the slides, so I gave you some more slides. All right, first I'm gonna talk about segue into from what Chris was saying. I think one of the reasons why I feel like it's so important that we do the mock election, well, for one thing, the only hope we have is in our youth. The youth need to be taking over and be ready to take over, and they aren't gonna be ready if we don't start educating them sooner. So my feeling is the mock election needs to go down to 6th grade. Civic education should go lower than that. So we do mock elections for grades 6 through 12. And nope, I love that first. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna start with talking to you a little bit about why we do it. And one thing that Chris said that really hit me was experience in voting. That the 50th time you vote is much easier than the first time. I think that's why when we look at the age bracket of 18 to 34, which is the way our Secretary of State breaks down the data for elections, that the 18 to 25 has completely different and way more scary data than the 25 to 34 when we add the 25 to 34. By the time young people reach 25 years old, they've already voted several times. If we start them voting in 6th grade, by the time they reach 18, they've already voted several times and they're ready to go. And that's what I think the beauty and the importance of the mock election is. So that voting is a habit thing should start way before they turn 18 and start voting, right? So I want to talk a little bit about the history. We have been very active in the League of Women Voters of Oregon in mock election until the last maybe decade or so, and then it sort of fell apart. Do you have a question you want to add?
We have been 2012, 2014, 2016, 2018, yes.
Okay.
They're great pictures.
Okay, cool. All right, so
True school.
yeah, I just didn't know about it. So for me, it didn't exist, right? So we're gonna, in 2022, we decided we needed to bring it back because it had been gone for a few years. And so 2018 was the last time before that. So for 4 years or so, and I have to give COVID a little bit of credit there, but so in 2022, we decided to go back. And we restarted a statewide OSME. We call it OSME very affectionately. And I coordinated it. And it was really fun. It got me working at the state level, which is, I think everybody needs to do that. Then you don't have to ask the question, what does state do? You're doing stuff, right? But we had 37 different schools, different teachers in many communities from Astoria. I'm going to read them to you. Astoria, Bend, Boring, Camas Valley. This is alphabetical order. Crane, Days. I can't even read my own handwriting. Hood River, Aragon, Klamath Falls, Lake Oswego, Medford, North Bend, Portland, Salem, Sandy, Springfield, Tiger, Troutdale, Westland, and Wilsonville. Amazing. But the worst thing that happened with that was for the in Portland, there was one school. And the largest district in the state, we had one teacher. So, and the problem was, like you've heard before, this email firewall that our public school systems have in place, and particularly true in the urban. We were able to get through lots of rural teachers, and they were excited and happy, and they did it, and we had such a great turnout. We had over 5,000 students registered across the state, and that was only about 30 from the city of Portland, from Multnomah County. So that we needed to fix. So we decided, Chris Kobe, you heard about him, Chris Kobe and I decided we would fix that by doing an election just for Multnomah County in the November special election. We had two ballot measures on the ballot that were interesting to young people. We try to do a very authentic ballot. We don't make them vote on everything, but we pick things that students might be interested in learning more about and that they can really get into. So we did the two ballot measures that in Multnomah County that were on tenant representation, which was very controversial in Multnomah County, and then for the children's levy, which of course they'd be interested in. What is the children's levy and why does it keep getting on the ballot? Every 5 years we have to vote on it again. So that turned out to be a really good, interesting two ballot measures for students to learn about. And then as a result of that, we had 65 teachers in the Multnomah County, Clackamas County, Washington County area who came on board as, I can't do it this year, but keep my name, I'll do it in 2024. So now we added to our 37 teachers that we had statewide, we added 64 in Multnomah County and Clackamas County and Washington County. So we've got a pretty good pool to start with. It's by no means finished. We need a lot more teachers involved. We had some from Lane, but we didn't have very many from Lane. So Freddie went to work on Lane County and gave me a list of, I don't know, maybe 40, 45, Steve. So we're working on those and we want you to help us too. So what we did in Multnomah County, our method was to build an army of local volunteers from the League of Women Voters of Portland. And we had each person go to their own neighborhood school. So nobody was driving across town. Everybody was going to their own neighborhood middle school or high school. And a couple people did both, did one of each. But so we had a lot of volunteers who went to every single school district in Portland. They called first, so this is a pretty easy volunteer activity, and it's very valuable. I think you're gonna find that you can get people to volunteer to do this. They call the school, make a connection with. I always say, I'm a teacher, so I worked in Portland Public Schools for 30 years, and I always say, first person you want to talk to always is the school secretary. They know everything and everybody, and they can do anything. They have more power than anyone. Don't call the principal, they're busy. Call the school secretary. They will. So we called the school, made contact, let them know what we were doing, figured out how to get in the building, because it isn't always easy. It used to be, you could just walk in the front door, but you can't really do that anymore. So figure out how to get in the building. Who do I need to talk to this? The school secretary knows who you need to talk to, right? And I probably should have advanced this slide. Yeah, okay. And then what we had them do then was then to talk to, get that name, the contact for the teacher. They don't even have to talk to the teacher, just find out who it is. Make sure that teacher has my email, because once they've emailed me, I'm in. I'm behind the iron curtain and I can talk to them and they can get my emails. Otherwise, they just bounce back because I'm an unknown entity in the school district email. So, but once they contact me, then I'm in, and then I start working with them. The person who volunteered can just sit back and wait. So it's not a big, long volunteer, but one of the things we hope for in Portland was that those people who made that contact with their school, they were there representing the League of Women Voters of Portland, and they have now somebody in the building they know. And so we now have an educational partnership with our schools all over the city of Portland, because we have people who have a one-to-one relationship with somebody in that building that they've spoken to, they know them, they can call them back, right? And one thing, the other thing about the school secretary is way less turnover. You know, you can make contact with a teacher, but that teacher might be gone, moved to another school next year. If you talk to the school secretary, more or less they're lifers. I mean, they're probably gonna die in that desk. So you've got a really good long-term contact with the school, and they have a relationship with the league, and they see the league as a partner and helper. And I think one of the things that we need to make sure they understand is our nonpartisan position, because there's a lot of fear out there. I have to say that, and I'm probably not even close to where I'm supposed to be on the slide. But one of the reasons, these are a whole bunch of really good reasons for why we should be doing the election, including the fact that we are partners, we can, build those educational partnerships. And I love that we did it in Portland with neighborhood people. So I just took my list, the list that Chris gave me of all the voter service volunteers, and I found their address in the little printed the little paper printed thing, put it all in a database, organized it by address, figured out, and sometimes I had to look on Zillow, put their address in Zillow to figure out what their middle school was and what their high school was. That's a good trick, by the way. Zillow knows where you all live and what your schools are. Just go on there. You can even see a picture of their house. And then I could organize them into smaller groups and say, hello, you 7 people, you all live in the Franklin district. And these are your middle schools. Do any of you want to volunteer to go or call your school? Just one. And it's not like they have to go do the whole neighborhood. They just have to talk to one school. Get me an email address that I can contact. And then we will take it from there. So what we do then is we'll have a registration date. These are all the dates that you need to remember for the May election. I'm going to kind of focus on the May election. I think it's a really, really important one for young voters because it's a primary and because they don't understand what the primary means when they're 18 years old and voting. And so they don't even bother to think about what party they're in and whether it matters. So we're going to have voter registration is going to start. The teacher, I will send the teacher a form and say, and all they have to do is tell me their name, their email, how many students they feel like, and it just has to be an estimate, will vote. That's all I need to start with. And then I get the roster going. And then we will vote, they will vote, hold the election in their school between May 5th and May 10th. That way we can get the data out to the public by May 17th. I'm hoping we have a lot, and it'll be really hard to organize it all because I love doing that, but also because I want a lot. We need to have a lot of students voting. And then on the 17th, I'll be able to write a press release and I'll give feedback to the teachers who participated so they get to see the press release before the press does. And then on May 21st, we have the real election. So there's a lot of support for these teachers. We create the ballots. I always say I because I started. There's about 40 people working on it, so it's all of us. We create the ballots. We won't be able to do that until we know what's going to be on the ballot, and then we can start from there. We pick off with a few things that are on the ballot that are authentic. So they're going to be voting on exactly the same things as their parents and their older brothers and sisters, not some made up thing. It's real, and they will do the kind of research they need to do to understand what those ballot measures and those candidates represent. And then by doing that, we're teaching them how to get ready for their own elections when they are of voting age. And then, so we create these authentic ballots. We just pick a few things so it's not overwhelming to either the students or the teachers. Teachers are really busy. Spring is a terrible time to have to do this, but it is what it is. And we're giving them lots of warning in advance because we've already started contacting our previous teachers. We already have a pretty good side list going. Hopefully we'll have a lot more by the time we get to, I'm gonna say February or March, when we want to really kick in. So by then we should know what's on the ballot. We can start creating the ballots. We also have our curriculum that's on state year round. It's and it's updated pretty much constantly. I mean, we're always finding new things to add and fixing things that we think need to be an update. And we also keep on the website at all times a generic lesson plan that just talks about how you might prepare your students to vote, just in generalities. It's not specific to an election. It's just in general, this is what you would want to do to set the stage for the mock election in your classroom and that sort of thing. And then also for the primary election, I can already feel these guys fidgeting. I'm going to have to hurry it up. I also am working on, a lot of us are working on 2 separate lesson plans just for the primary election, which we will just give to the teachers that are full of resource suggestions and links and all kinds of information. And these are about, one of them is called Parties and Primaries. And it has a link, it has links to every single recognized party in the state. And so that students can research them, find out what they stand for, go a little deeper if they want to. And then what we're suggesting in the lesson plan for an activity is that a small group of students would become the expert on a party and present to the rest of the class the viewpoints of that party, and they could ask and answer questions and that sort of thing. And then one of the things we hope comes out of that, and part of the whole lesson, is that students understand that even though you don't feel like you're a Republican or a Democrat, for the primary, it's important that you register for one or the other, even temporarily, and it's really easy to do. You can do it online. Go online, change for the primary, and then change back to what you really feel like you are, which I have to say I do every primary election. So I think giving them that information early, so they understand when it comes time to vote, that they need to check that. So go online and check what party you're in, and then make sure that you know that you're going to receive a ballot that has actually something to vote on. The other one is the ranked choice voting, and I am a math teacher, so as you might expect, it is a math class lesson. They could also be taught in a social studies class, but I love the whole idea of a 6th and 7th grade math class doing a ranked choice vote and then doing the math and figuring it out. It is kind of low level math for high school kids, but it would definitely work in a social studies class just so they can see how it actually works. I think it would be good for us. I have to tell you, I mean, old people don't get it. So it doesn't matter what level of math you're on, you need this. All right. So this is the whole thing I already said, because I got ahead of myself, but this is the whole thing, like the process we went through in Portland that worked really, really well. And I'd love to see more people do it. And one thing I want to make sure I tell you at this point is I am here for you. If you need help getting your volunteers together and making sure they understand what the process is and what OSME is, I will be there for your virtual Zoom meeting. Just tell me when you want to be there. And if you all want to gather up and say, I'd like to do one just with us, I'll do one with us, and we can just walk through the whole process. Or maybe this will be enough. Okay, who's next? This is that I'm screen. Stay right.
A little shorter than me, sorry. Hey everyone, I am Elizabeth Kirby. I am the LWVOR DEIJ chair and the DEIJ mentor to our youth council. So my job today is to lay the framework for Deanie and Mila to explain DEIJ and the ways your local league can use the info in our new toolkit to learn and take action to create a more equitable, diverse, and inclusive league experience. There we go. So to establish some shared language and understanding before we begin, DEIJ stands for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice. You'll find in-depth definitions for those words and some other common terms on the little half-page handout that should be on everybody's table. The history of DEIJ has its roots in the civil rights movement and was used to create more inclusion in workspaces, particularly for people of color. Today, DEIJ has grown to encompass a variety of intersections or unique identities that come together to form who we are as individuals. In the context of our local leagues, DEIJ can be used to create both an understanding and a framework to create spaces that are mindful of different identities. Because when we appreciate, acknowledge, and honor different identities, we create increasingly productive spaces. Now I'm going to hand it over to Deanie to give us some examples of DEIJ in practice and action for our local leagues.
Hey, once again, I'm Dee. Is that working? Oh, no, I'm really trying to pay it all. Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Dee. I use they, she pronouns. I go to Lewis and Clark College. I'm first year. Like Elizabeth said, I just wanted to share a little bit about, different ways that leagues can use DEIJ in practice. And so things that are important to me and just creating inclusive spaces for specifically LGBTQ and BIPOC students. And so one way to do that is including pronouns on name tags, ensuring that voting registration tables have representation of different identities. So ensuring that your voting booths have people of color or people who represent a different identity than what we particularly see in voting registration booths. And other things would be ensuring that events are spaces that are accessible by wheelchair or close to transportation, like public transportation, like busing or Amtrak, and are pricing accessible, so don't have charges for parking or utility fees are covered and things like that. Another crucial step to creating diverse and inclusive spaces is to build relationships with other organizations in your community. There are so many nonprofits that are working out there who have already done the framework for creating inclusive environments. And so just reaching out to them and asking them what you can do as a league to better suit marginalized communities or different identities. And that can amplify their voices and engage in actions that lead to equitable and just outcomes. And I wanted to introduce our Youth Council DEIJ co-chair, Mila, who will share some specifics on DEIJ strategies.
Hi everyone, my name is Mila and I am a student at the University of Oregon. So something the DEIJ toolkit can provide a framework to get started is, how to be welcoming to young voters without making them feel alienated. Through DEIJ, I've learned how crucial it is to, first engage in active listening, which means genuinely, hearing and listening to young voters, their concerns, their needs, and their ideas. It's important to create spaces where they feel comfortable expressing themselves, when having an open dialogue. Having diverse representation and ensuring ours and possibly, your organization reflects the diversity of the young voter population. While having, someone that looks like you or may share your lived experiences and perspectives can really change the outcome of possible future voters. I feel one thing we do extremely well within the Youth Council is how we use language and tone, being mindful of our words and, how you choose to execute them so that we can avoid, any feeling of dismissiveness. Treating young voters with respect and as equal partners is very important. Of course, there will be times where we come across others with different beliefs or opinions. However, when confronted in those moments, being able to appropriately communicate and, make oneself feel understood will make the opportunity for shared ideas and outlets, to be better exchanged. Getting people out of their comfort zones, when it comes to voting and discussing policies. I can say in my personal experience and daily interactions, I sometimes forget, the people I come across are not me. We have different families, boundaries, and ways of communicating. Some come from environments where they aren't having these uncomfortable conversations, discussing voting or being educated on current events and policies that might actually be directly affecting them in their daily lives. Challenging yet crucial steps towards getting people out of their comfort zone begin with education and awareness. Educate individuals about the impact of policies on diverse communities while highlighting the benefits of inclusivity. Community engagement is also here, or huge, kind of like how we're all here today at this workshop, fostering a sense of community and belonging by organizing events, forums, and discussions that bring people from diverse backgrounds together, really encourages respectful dialogue that again can create, an open exchange of ideas. In my own experience, being invited and welcomed alone has greatly impacted me, where I can, come into a space, especially with everyone here, where I can see I'm not the only person of color, and I'm engaged with people that share the same passions as I do. Has just made my time feel very positive, and I'm very grateful. The toolkit has helped me with just being able to communicate while having my experiences validated. And lastly, just to mention, I've learned for myself, and I think it's incredibly important to share that, it's not always the responsibility of people within marginalized communities to bear the weight of, the change that's going on all around us. As a community and as allies, your job is not only to support, but to guide others as leaders and as teachers. So yeah, thank you.
Mila shared a little bit of her own experience, and so I was going to share a bit of mine. I know that some people feel like DEIJ is unnecessary because it may not affect them. But an example in my life is where DEIJ has helped me is that I don't really consider myself to have a religious affiliation. And from some people's point of view, that means I shouldn't learn about religion, or it may not be as important to me to learn about religion. But because of Western society and our societal involvement in religion, I still go out of my way to learn about it, especially in diverse settings with people who have many different religions. Because I have friends, classmates, and teachers who are religiously affiliated, and when I know more about it, I can have a deeper connection with them. And DEIJ works the same. So although you may not fit in the identity that tends to be covered by DEIJ toolkits or conversation, it still impacts you because these help our friends, coworkers, and future relationships that you may come across. Like Mila was saying, we are people of color, and in spaces like this, we normally don't see ourselves represented. And so when we have people who understand our perspective or our potential past living situations, it's really nice because we are able to come into these spaces and know that we are welcomed and appreciated, and that really helps with voting and wanting to go out and vote. So I'm going to pass it back to Elizabeth.
Thank you so much to both Mila and Deanie for sharing your experiences with us. It is so important for all of us to remember that DEIJ is a journey that pairs self-education and self-reflection with action. We share the responsibility of seeking knowledge and listening when those who come from different lived experiences speak. We invite you all to explore our toolkit and start or continue your DEIJ journey. You can email us at deij@lwvor.org or use the QR code on our handout to request a DEIJ strategy session. Thank you so much. And now Nidhi is going to talk a little bit about youth advocacy.
Hi everyone, I'm Nibby. I am a senior at Sunset High School in Portland, and I am the LEAD's Youth Advocacy Chair. Okay, so I'm here to also just you've heard from my colleagues now that how to engage voters, DEIJ, and I'm here to wrap it up as to why it all matters. And before we jump in, I'd like to start with the definition of youth advocacy. And youth advocacy is the process of identifying, understanding, and addressing issues that are important to young people. And this is important because it helps shape a generation that is invested in improving the future of our world. And it encourages leadership skills that can be applied in so many settings, you guys, especially for youth in school, in college, in a workplace, and beyond, anywhere. These skills are so important. And we got to create a society where all voices are heard so that you have a society that serves everyone. So in our rapidly changing world, we're getting bombarded with information all the time. Politics are changing in the span of a day. And we need all the help we can get to achieve our goals as a nation, a state, and as people. And youth are the best people to do this. Because younger people, millennials and Gen Z, ages 18 to 40, will be almost half of eligible voters in the 2024 election. And by 2028, they'll be a majority. But the key word here is that they are potential voters. And as you heard from my colleague Chris, not all of them vote. And to be frank, it's unrealistic to assume that 100% of youth voters will vote. But to maximize the number of potential voters, we need to educate young voters so they feel prepared on ballot issues. I don't know about you guys, but I would feel much better about doing something that I knew what was going on, I knew how to do it, I knew what I was getting into, rather than just jumping in and being told that I should do something. But the know-how isn't enough. You can know how to do something and still not do it. You have to be motivated to do it. So we need young voters to have a personal stake in the election. We need to show them that their voices matter. And we need to have issues that they're invested in because they will be motivated to act then. Because let's be fair, most of the people running our state, our country, well, they're not youth, right? So it's often their voices that get heard the most. And while their voices are also important, for this up and coming base of young people, we need to hand the mic to them as well. So what do we need to do now? Can we hear some shouts from the crowd?
Connections.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing.
Have conversations.
Engage.
I think create the expectation that everybody needs to go. Everybody should go. Just create that expectation. Responsibility.
Answer the question, my vote doesn't matter. Have a response to that. Compelling.
Yeah, all those things are true.
We need to put ballot boxes in the college libraries.
It would be helpful.
Sorry, I'm messing this up.
Yeah, that's okay. But there was an answer on the next slide, and along with all those things, it was youth invested in voting. So, but how do we get them invested in voting? I think if you guys know young people, you've seen them the way they get up. Their alarm rings, they get up, they roll over and they check their phone, their social media, their messages, the news. The fact of the matter is that young people, they get their information online. They trust it more, they use it more, it's easier to use. They have access to it all the time. Just they gotta pull their phone out of their pocket, log onto their laptop. They grew up with the technology, so it's super easy for them. And more than that, online content is designed to be engaging and memorable. And we have this incredible tool at our fingertips that we can use to engage young voters. Social media. So now, can we have a show of hands out in the crowd? How many people feel comfortable using social media? Okay, so I see quite a lot. And then the follow-up question is, how many people feel comfortable creating the content that they interact with so regularly on social media? Okay, that's not as many, but that is okay, because we are here to help. The youth council will be hosting 2 how-to webinars on engaging young voters and firing them up using social media, because when they interact with this information, it will evoke emotional reactions and make them feel compelled to act. So we will be having 2 how-to webinars on interacting with young voters on social media. The first one will be about the apps of Instagram, Facebook, and Threads, which also goes to Instagram. And then our second part is Twitter, otherwise known as X, and TikTok. The dates and times are to be determined, but they will be on the state week calendar. And by the way, these webinars will be virtual, they'll be recorded. So if you can't attend, they will be on the league's website. And yeah, thank you so much for your time. I will be passing it over to Diana DeMaria, our amazing Youth Outreach Committee co-chair.
Good afternoon. Before I begin, we will start collecting all the question cards from your tables. I'm going to keep my remarks to less than 5 minutes because the most important part of the day will be the question and answers directly to the youth council. To have them all together here with all the things that they have on their schedule is quite a gift. If you have any final questions about how and the nuts and bolts of how to put in their strategies, you can put them on the cards, or you can always email us later. You can just use a sign. We have, let's see. Most of the leagues here attending virtually, and welcome to our space, by the way, and also in person, have said we are super worried. We do not know how to involve youth in our community. Basically, I wanted to share real quick a 2-minute story on what happened in 2023, why this youth council is standing up in front of you. And I think it all goes back to the power to say yes. We have to go where the youth are because they're already involved and engaged. So what happened is Becky attended a Senator Ron Wyden town hall, and Chris Walker was there, and he actually asked her, how do I get involved in the league? And she said, we're gonna make that happen. We don't have anything right now, he didn't need to know that, but we're gonna make that happen. So basically, with a youth already interested and a question asked, it began to happen. So my only advice, and all of us are learning as we go, so there's no way that we can tell you how it is, because that is being recreated across all 50 states in completely different ways. Maine has a different kind of program that we do. They have a 3-month high school only internship, and they are not required to be league members. They often join, but they don't have to. We have heard from Alaska that has a youth movement where they make radio and video clips for voting and broadcasting. But they are under the age of 16, so they are part of the movement to get the age requirement moved. We have campus units being formed for league in different states. There's one in Alabama. We have different youth movements. They actually call themselves young leaguers. So all over the states, everything is happening organically in the communities where they are. So there is no one answer. The only thing you can do is, as they said already, find the community organizations around the issues that you care about, and there are many. And then the most crucial thing that I can advise is to not make assumptions. It's hard to picture this because many of us grew up in a different era, but every single person standing up here is either, they're all full-time students, they have sometimes 3 jobs, and I'm not exaggerating, and then they have family commitments they take very seriously, and they are also civically engaged with causes they care about. So for them to be standing up here, you get a kind of picture of how much they must care. And to respect where a person is at, you have to ask, what's important to you? How can I support you in that? It may mean that they only stop by or stop in for just a few months. So the mentality that we're not going to invest anything unless you promise your life away kind of has to be put on the shelf, because you both gain from even a temporary or a short-term interaction. So let me know when the questions are ready. Okay, and then let's see. The last part is just about being flexible. You may realize, you may know that league time is a little bit different. It's run traditionally not on the school calendar. So one other lesson we've learned this year is that students have more time to get civically involved and work on projects, maybe when they're not in school, and that means summertime, and that means December. So December and early January, which are traditionally times when other more traditional leagues take a break. So if you want to involve youth, it may mean being more flexible in terms of the times you're available, or your planning times, or your mentoring times. And it also means being conscious under 34. They are working, they have young families, they are in school. Do your meetings and your board meetings and your events, are they available for that demographic or not? So basically, I think we're ready for questions, and then we can get started. You can hear from the person directly, or we'll decide who is the best person to answer that particular question. We're hoping to facilitate with the online questions and alternate, but any question that is not answered today will be in the follow-up materials that come to each attendee, both virtual and in person, next week. Yes, can you bring the questions up here, Mimi?
Oh, yeah, here's that. You think?
Okay, do you want to facilitate?
Sorry, I can't do it. Shares. You can keep talking, or just.
We'll just start with this one while you're looking for it. Okay, somebody can raise their hand if they want to answer this. What issues is youth council interested in?
Yeah, I'm really interested in economic inequality and like housing for the houseless. And that's partly due to the situation in my hometown of Grants Pass, where it's not like the richest community and there's a lot of homeless people. And it's kind of my own parents' involvement in that. Like my dad built these tiny houses, so that really inspired me. And that's kind of like formed my own interest in that. As well, I think climate change is a really pressing issue for us, and I think there's a lot of economic opportunity in investing in alternative energies and things like that.
I am interested in reproductive justice because my background is in parenthood. I am very much interested in immigration as well, because both of my parents are immigrants. And climate change, because as my dad says, if we don't solve that, we're not gonna have any political issues, so.
Yeah.
For me, women's rights, I come from a long line of women who were unafraid to speak about what they believed in, so I really hope to continue that legacy. And then for me as well, climate change, I'm actually part of another organization, the Sunrise Movement, which is about getting people invested in climate change. So yeah, I really love that. And then the housing crisis, especially in terms of hostile architecture.
I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I'm interested in like LGBTQ rights and BIPOC rights. I grew up with those identities and I wasn't allowed to be out at home, and so just allowing spaces or creating spaces for those types of kids who grow up in that areas, along with like mental health access and oh, BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, People of Color, if you did not know that.
I would also say I agree with everyone and very passionate about all of these things, like we all are. But I would say definitely racial equity. I'm from Portland, Oregon, and it is a predominantly white city. And so growing up was very challenging, and being in school and even my work environment was difficult. And so just I really want to work towards just like changing my spaces and spaces for other people like me. Also health policy and the healthcare system and just like affordable everything would be very nice. So hopefully in the future, yeah.
Whoever would like to answer this can raise their hand. How do barcodes encourage voting?
I think it's almost like an expectation, like youth want things to be like one click. One, just scan it, enter their name, maybe their information, and then they'll be set. You know, their ballot will come to their house. So I think the simpler we can make it, the easier we can make it, the more digital, I think it's gonna really transform the landscape. And make youth voting a lot easier, and tabling when we're registering voters, it'll make it a lot simpler. So I think that's something maybe we can all, or we can have a hand in deciding and creating.
Does anyone else want to add anything to that, or are we good?
I mean, I can add that when we were tabling at the Portland Night Market, we did use a lot of like digital, like barcodes. And it was really helpful. Everybody scanned them and it was really easy to access. And if they don't want to access it, then they can put their phone away and look at it another time. So I think it's a system that definitely works with digitalization.
Okay, so we have collected questions from everybody, and for the social media specific ones, I'm just gonna save those for the youth council to incorporate into their webinars that they're gonna be hosting on social media. So one of the next questions is, how can the youth council help us network around the state to help connect youth locally so that we can really complete the circle? And also part of that is, how do we target small rural communities and engage youth in those rural areas?
Me and Chris come from Grants Pass, which I would say is a pretty rural town. And so, and then I work a lot in nonprofit in our Southern Oregon region. And so we have a lot of connections there. Me and Chris work with the same nonprofit that has a lot of connections throughout, especially throughout Southern Oregon, that is more like rural than Grants Pass is. And so, I would say just reaching, the easiest way, like, to engage is just like, reaching out to teachers, reaching out to local organizations, even if you don't think they'll answer back. Like I said earlier, there's always framework that has already been done by nonprofits and different organizations that's really easy to get connected with. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, and then like we previously said, the number one thing also is social media, because whether kids are in rural areas or urban areas, most everyone, especially young people, have a phone and a social media account. So that is also one of the better ways to do it.
I think starting close at home, like with your own families, with your own grandchildren. I know my own civic engagement, or your own children, or your friends' children. I know my own civic engagement and being interested in politics or caring about these issues came from my own family and my parents' friends, and watching that dialogue happening and having them ask me questions, hearing what I thought. So I think it starts at home.
So what I'm hearing is it starts at home, and also everyone needs to attend the social media webinars. This is a question for any of you that want to weigh in. The league advocates and lobbies for things that they support. Would it be helpful if there was a law that required a civics class to include or require a mock election component?
I do think that would be very helpful. I think that everything stems from education. I've worked in the education space for a while, through like peer-led sex education through Planned Parenthood, as well as, I'm Jewish, and in Oregon, there was only a Holocaust education mandate that was passed like 2 years ago. And it still has not been put into effect, right? The only way we can like counter any of these issues is through education in schools. So I think that that would be very helpful.
I agree with what's being said. I think also just teaching kids how to vote in civics classes, because right now that's not required. And I think a state statute would make a difference.
Thank you. So it looks like, we don't have any, I've kind of grouped all of the questions by category and asked them all at once. There are some really great resources that some of you have shared for our youth council, so thank you for that. We will make sure that, we share those with the youth council. One final thing that I do want to remind everybody is that the youth council is available to speak to your local league. If you go onto the youth council website, which is part of the state league website, you can actually fill out a form to request them to speak either in person or virtually. And it includes a number of topics that you might want them to speak on. So for those of you who are interested in having one of our wonderful youth council members speak or strategize or help with an event, you can reach out to them via that. And unless there's anything else, for the youth council. Yeah, absolutely.
I would ask that you guys talk to the young people in your lives and tell them about us, and then see if they want to join. So we are always looking to grow, reach more communities in Oregon. Yeah, expand on what we can accomplish and how many voters we can register.
And just adding on to that, any level of involvement is completely fine, and we appreciate all of your guys' support so much. We couldn't do it without you, so thank you.